Erin Masuda's exhibition at Daiwa House opened on 30th of May, and it will be on until 19th of July. So if you haven't had come and have a look at her artwork yet, please do so. Now, today, Maya is in Berlin, Germany, and her co-speaker and moderator, Professor Johnny Golding, she is in London. So we are doing the Zoom meeting today. Let me just give you a brief introduction of the speakers today. Maya Erin Masuda's exhibition is, as I said, in Daiwa House. But today, Maya and Professor Johnny Golding will discuss Maya's artistic motivation while exploring her recent project, in which Maya takes an intimate look at contemporary ecological traumas and biopolitics, seen in particular chemical infrastructures or nuclear catastrophes. Maya Erin Masuda is as I said, Berlin and Tokyo and London-based queer interdisciplinary artist. Maya brings her speculative ecological intersubjectivities to life through storytelling via film, performance, writing, and time-based installations. Throughout her work, she delicately poses technobiological questions by probing various planetary traumas and chemical infrastructure seen in spatio-temporary, very difficult word, diverse sites such as nuclear catastrophes. After obtaining an MA from the Royal College of Art in Britain, she is currently researching post-nuclear culture in relation to new media at Universität der Künste, Berlin, under Professor Nina Fischer. Now, her co-speaker today and moderator, Professor Johnny Golding, holds the chair of Philosophy and Fine Arts at Royal College of Arts. Johnny is the principal lead on 2 AI labs with Hong Kong Polytechnic, which are AI as distributed intelligence and AI in real-world storytelling. Johnny's work situates post-Newtonian analytics, new materialisms, and the erotics of sense as radical matter, a practice-led encounter with contemporary philosophy, art, and the wild sciences. Johnny was born in New York City, lived in Toronto, and carried out postgraduate studies, PhD, at the Universities of Toronto and Cambridge. So I will hand it over to Maya, please.
Okay, it's actually an honor to be invited for this talk today at Daiwa Foundation, and also to have my solo show at Daiwa Foundation as well. And I'd like to start with saying thank you for Professor Johnny Golding for joining us today. It means really your research influenced my PhD projects as well, and I'm very, very grateful that you are here. Also, a lot of people, I can see my researcher colleagues from Seoul, Tokyo, and London, also from Berlin, and I'm very grateful that you are here. Also, I can see my mother joining from Tokyo. Hello, Mom. Thank you so much for staying up so late and being here. Okay, let me begin. So I'm Maya Erin Masuda. I'm an artistic researcher based in London, Berlin, and Tokyo, and I'm a queer interdisciplinary artist. So I have actually a background in science, but I obtained my MA at Royal College of Art a year or 2 years ago, and I'm currently engaged in research at University of the Arts Berlin in the field of queer ecology and nuclear biopolitics under the supervision of Professor Nina Fischer. So my work theme revolves around technobiopolitics in relation to planetary traumas and chemical infrastructures. And yeah, my practice encompasses various different fields like curations, activism, publishing as well. I was an appointed curator of Kyoto Arts Center on 2023. Also, I do a lecturing job sometimes. Also, I write critiques. So that's briefly who I am. And yeah, moving on to the introduction of this exhibition. The exhibition title is called Sleep, Lick, Leak, Deep. And this exhibition is particularly about modern human entanglements that embraces ambiguity, multiplicity, and the queer. And also, there was also particular focus on the unbearable ecological intimacy that our current contemporary society upholds as well. So that's the brief theme of this exhibition. And there are 3 rooms currently present at the Daiwa Foundation. One is the one that's on the first floor. On the left-hand side is this one. The work is called Pour Your Body Out, and it's an installation work. And secondly, this is the film installation on the ground floor. And thirdly, this work is on the right-hand side of the first floor. And those 3 different bodies of works they are actually from the various different kinds of period of my artistic career. So I'd like to briefly start from introducing like the project that became the starting point of my practice, if that works. So my artistic career started when I've been engaged in this project since 2019, and it's still an ongoing project. But the project name is Nyoro Bara Bara Picha Picha Machines, which I first created in Tokyo. So what's happening in this work is that I try to explore this alternative representation of machineries that is more open and constantly responding to the environment, just like animals or plants does to their environment as well. And yeah, what is happening in the installation is that, as you can see, I recreated the sculptural exterior of machinery by using bioskin and bioskin technology, which is like those bioskins are made of tapioca, gelatins, glycerin, or all those like organic matters. So yeah, as you can see, by recreating the outer surface of machinery, it becomes more open and it upholds this sense of precarity within it. Also, as you can see inside the work, there is like a water that's over there, and inside the water, there's a circuit that's running through it. So when the water evaporates, it changes the form of circuit, which allows the work to be which allows the machinery to be appearing and disappearing, constantly responding to the exteriors. So this was the initial project, and I was exhibited this London, Berlin, Czech Republic, several other cities as well. But the turning point occurred when I was getting into a discussion when I exhibited this work in London. One of my researcher friend who is engaged in nuclear research, she poses the question to me that the surface of this bioskin that I create visually resembles to the scars imposed by the radiations. So since this comment became a turning point in my life, and since 2021, in collaboration with animal research centers in Fukushima and Chernobyl, I started a research on the genetic mutations and skin abnormalities of animals left behind in the post-nuclear site. And this new bodies of research firstly met this like pre-existing one in this work called Imaginary Land Twin Membranes, which is also exhibited in the Daiwa Foundation currently as well. And in this work, I try to, because I received this like photographic archives of animal skin that's residing in Chernobyl first. So I try to intentionally mimic the skin texture that I've seen in the photography. And to recreate the skin of machinery reflecting on that, so that I attempted to reverse engineer the accumulated record of geotrauma brought about by the technopolitics imposed by humans. And yeah, like it's just I try to put them together into the speculative futurity that I present. So yeah, I thought about skin as a motif that is like ultimately personal, which represent personal memory, proximity, and intimacy, but at the same time, where the governmental biopolitics or more like unequal distribution of chemical infrastructure becomes most evident. It's very much the border of our body. And at the same time, I combine this notion of skin with those material like concrete, chains, and fences, which has been historically often implemented in the segregation of all living beings. And and try to explore this idea of proximity and its embedded duality. And the exhibition is called Constructing Utopia, which happened in Gallery XY Olomouc in Czech Republic. But there has been tours and symposiums, but this discussion that happened around this exhibition led me to very much to the outer world, because I was surrounded by this, because this exhibition, Constructing Utopia, is particularly focusing on the speculative utopia imagined in the post-Soviet Eastern Europe. And I was that time based in London, and which was quite very much detached from these Eastern European or Central European discourses. So I had to go through this process of unlearning of, not regarding Western European narrative as the central one. Oops. Yeah, so this is the work that is currently exhibited at the Daiwa Foundation as well. Yeah. So there's another work that's called Pour Your Body Out, which has been created as an extension of the work that I've discussed previously right now. And the work theme is around skin, body, technology, and slow violence, especially in relation to nuclear politics. What's happening inside the installation is twofold. I'd like to explain it. So firstly, as you can see, there is white water that's stored and circulating inside the installation, which is actually, there is some kind of like a powder milk dissolved in it. So as a quality, it is milk. And the circulation, what's happening in the installation is the circulation, leak, and the decay of the milk. But at the same time, as you can see, there is a small bowl here. There is a flower that's contained inside a bowl, and there's like a water and chemicals, yellow chemical that's dissolved in it. And here, the absorbance of chemicals and also the soul transformation and death of the living beings is also included in the show. And when I first imagined this work, I thought about it as an intersection of 4 different kinds of bodies. Firstly, the body of our planet. Secondly, our human bodies. At the same time, our bodies of technology, specifically the bodies of nuclear power plants that I've seen when I've done a field work, and also the bodies of animals. And the reason that I tried to use milk inside the work is because I thought the milk is a material which represents the biopolitics and reproductive rights, especially firstly about human-animal oppression. For example, in Chernobyl, where the nuclear accident happened, it's been reported that so many animals been slaughtered due to the human fear of accidentally eating them or encountering their bodily fluids. At the same time, in Fukushima, all the animals that survived in the evacuation zone were ordered to be killed. And this was quite very much a shocking news for me when it happened. Oh. Another thing is that when it comes to human oppression, it's not only when it comes to human oppression, multiple testimony shows that the fear of there were several testimony that says there were women who reside in the area. This did not happen by the government, but by the local doctors or by the people who works for the local government, that they were told to have an abortion if they were pregnant, and this kind of emergence of institutionalized abortions shocked me as well. And another thing, this is particularly because I'm a queer artist, I'm very much interested in this very, complicated politics where Japan still promotes nuclear energy. It's one of the few countries that still promotes nuclear energy after the such tragic nuclear explosion happened. And still, they are very much concerned about the population decrease, and they oppress, the current government pretty much oppress queer people, saying that they are not productive. And this kind of contradictory idea and measures that they are taking, I don't know, in a way inspired me and very much struck me. So here in this work, I'm trying to, the circulation of bodily fluids, neither completely ours nor those of animals or planet, welcomes questions around posthumanism, intimacy, pain, and queerness in the foreseeable future. So yeah, so this has been the body of work that I like. Two of the works that I'm exhibiting at the Daiwa Foundation. But you know, the more I get involved in this kind of research-based artistic practices, I found myself being kind of categorized into this position of this new waves of investigative artistic practices that's present in the contemporary art scene right now. And I also feel a little bit stuck and struggle with it too. So this is still like a not answered question that I have, but I just created this dilemma into a graph, like a chart, so that it's easier for everyone to understand. Maybe I can just go a little bit closer. So yeah, so in current contemporary art scene, there's this like a new waves of investigative artistic practices that are very present at the moment, such as the most prominent example would be the one that's been done by forensic architecture. So just briefly explaining, forensic architecture is like an institution that's based in Goldsmiths, like a research collective, and they do like a large scale investigation and also data visualization, and something like this. I'm gonna just show briefly like what they do. But this is one of the investigation that they've done in Palestine.
Open source archaeology, which brought together material from site visits, social media posts, historic satellite images, and contemporary drone footage. Together with the Palestinian organization Ein Media, we conducted drone surveys of the area, allowing us to recreate the coastline as a three-dimensional point cloud.
Yeah, so as you can see, since they're a collective of artists, journalists, sound designer, architects, and many different kinds of group of people, they do a like large scale investigation, and they combine them together as an architectural model, or so that it's easier for the wider citizen to be to understand what is happening at those sites. And in their sense, this sense of like a investigation and artistic practices, it's happening at the simultaneously. And there's this kind of, and I really admire their work, and I think they're creating significant change in the contemporary society as well. But at the same time, there's been this criticism from art world as well. Like probably the famous example is like the written work by Claire Bishop. It's called Information Overload, as you can see. But in this, if you want to go to the link, there is, you can see her full critique as well. And there are several different points that she makes in the discussion. However, the one that inspired me is that she is criticizing this kind of investigative artistic practices, saying that firstly, those investigations could be possible just sitting in front of a computer without traveling or without embodied research, which affects the quality of work because the work itself is not translated through the artist's body or their own sense or their autoethnographical perspective. At the same time, she also criticizes the fact that, you know, those big details are accessible because they are institution based in, for example, Goldsmith, or like, you know, it's an institution inside the London, is it like a University of London, I believe. So this poses question on what data is accessible to whom and how it is reachable and also the democratization of it, and yeah, like things like, and so on. And I deeply agree with her critique as well. And at the same time, there's another aspect that I would like to draw in this discussion as well, which is it's like a kind of thinking that I was doing when I read the written work of Jean-Pierre Jeunet. It's called, the written work is called 4 Hours in Shatila. But it's actually a reportage of the Makassar that took place in Palestinian refugee camp in Lebanon over the course of 3 days in September 1982. And in this writing, he actually wanders around the site after the Makassar happened. I'm so sorry because I only have the Japanese version of the writing, so I cannot show you the full content or anything. But yeah, he wanders around and he's guided by this person who's introducing the site to him, and then he gradually starts to understand the situation, what happened, and he asks, what happened to this woman's hand, or like, is she tortured or something? And then he answers like, look closely, just look in more details. And still Jean Genet doesn't get what happened, and he still constantly asks question. And then the guide person again says like, look closely, you are not seeing anything. And I think this very act of, how you call it, like embedding this inability of witnessing makes this writing very significant, because I think usually in writing you only talk about the things that you were able to see, but in this writing, this constant repetitive and conversation around how he's there and how he's trying to be embodied, but he's actually not seeing anything. This contradiction is very much present. And yeah, which is also apparent in this actual writing as well. There was lastly, like in the end, like the Jean Genet says, like, I feel like I've seen everything. And then this guide person still replies, no, you haven't seen anything. You are not seeing anything. And that's, I feel like, the reality when I'm engaged in my own research project. And still, this is an ongoing question for me. But reflecting on this dilemma, which probably I believe a lot of, like most of the investigative artistic practices are facing, one of my small reaction or response to this, provisional response to this, was the exhibition or like research project that I curated at Kyoto Arts Center last year. It's called Ground Zero, and I invited Eden Sanyo Kim and also Vivian Celeste. Those are the artists from outside of Japan. Also, I and 2 other Japanese artists, we as a collective, we actually traveled to Japan together. We stayed, it's like a combination of residency / research body, also like an exhibition. So we spent so much time together, did a research, we traveled and did a field work at Fukushima nuclear power plant as well. And yeah, so in the end, we've been engaged in the research for 6 months in total, I feel like. And yeah, we created this exhibition, focuses on the implementation of technology, especially in relation to Russian-Ukrainian wars, and how it impacts the local ecological community. So yeah, those were my very small efforts and answer to the questions that I've mentioned before about the embodied artistic practices and investigation, I would say. And this research body led to the work that's been exhibited on the ground floor. It's called The Borderers. And this work is composed of film part, and also there was this material archive part that's on the table. Yeah, when I explain just a little bit about the film part, so as a process, I collected 2,500 photographies of worldwide satellite images, which capture the traces of historical pollution from the above, such as, in Japan, there is this phenomenon called red tide, or in Germany, it's called green tide. Or there are some traces that I could find. It was traces of like Iranian mines and things, and I put them together as a material. And also at the same time, I collected 2,500 photographies of skin abnormalities or irritation of animal left behind in the nuclear site. And I collected those 5,000 material together, put them together into a stable diffusion. It's like an image processing AI kind of. And I created those many footages of something that is skin or the surface of the planet, or we could say it's somewhere in between. It's somewhere and nowhere. And by doing so, so the fragments of imaginary land that could have existed elsewhere, or the skin of anonymous entity, speculate the gravity of the pain of our planet, which fluctuates between different scales, location, and time. And there was a poetry that I was writing when I was traveling in Fukushima. I was there for several days. So this work is combined with the poetry that I wrote. And I can't show the entire video here, so I would be very grateful if you could visit the site and see the full film. And which is also combined with several of the photographic images. This is actually me who's inside Fukushima, like 5th nuclear power plant, which is directly located next door to the one that's exploded. It is the first one and third one that's exploded. But this is, I believe this is it. So I really hope if you have a chance to visit the show, and thank you so much for listening.
What I've got here is I did a bit of a PowerPoint about how this kind of work works as art and works as a form of hope, works as a form of political strategy. So just so you have a sense of a totally different approach that many artists are now using, and in particular, the profound work of Maya Masuda's work is quite incredible. And I also would like to just say, if you're in London, try and get down to the Daiwa Anglo-Japanese Foundation, because the work is profound. And I also like to thank the foundation, because I think this kind of support for artists is very important. So I will begin. So what you have on the screen right now is an image of mycelium. I work in 2 different AI labs, and one of them is working with different forms of communication. And the reason I'm mentioning this in light of the provocative slides and the images and so on that we've seen is because there's a certain way that something circulates. There's a certain kind of camouflage that goes on, and there's a certain kind of improv. And these words aren't usually put forward because we're dealing with pretty horrible environments, the politics of cruelty and so on and so forth. So you often don't hear this other kind of thing, and I want to just throw that out so you're there. This is an image by Dr. Shira Voxman and John Wild, Dr. Wild, called Interference Spores. Oops, let's see if I can do the next one. Obviously, I can't go into any of my. Here we go. So now this is another kind of circulation, another kind of sporing, and this, oops, sorry, that was too quick. I'm getting as bad as, oops, nope, let's go back. There we go. That's an octopus that is sort of shaped into something that is looking very much like a coral. Now we have, these are all different ways of understanding a knowledge system. And so what I'm trying to get you to just relax into is how something that has lots of different moving parts to it, but becomes something that one can grasp. And so this is an early work, obviously, Maya already talked about it, but I just want to mention this. So what's going on in a lot of these kind of truncated, odd moments that you might walk into going, it's sound, it's music, it's videos, is what we're calling a radical form of matter. And this is part of the of what I'd like to sort of get us to have a sense of. And I'm going to run through these slides because we only have like 10 minutes, but if you get it, great. And if you don't get it, we can talk about it at some other point, including tonight. So what I wanted to do was say that this knowledge system moves away from typical forms of understanding science divided by art, which comes under the general term as enlightenment, or the metaphysics of dialectics, which we won't get into. it actually is a certain form of a poetics. It's a poiesis, it's an energy, there's something erotic about it, some tactile, it's carnal, it's inhabited. And I mention this because, you might want to put together a lot of things and it doesn't work. You look at it and you go, well, this doesn't have the kind of energy, it doesn't have the trauma, it doesn't have, something's not working. How come it's working in Maya's work, but it's not working somewhere else? And that's in part because there's some kind of poetic, tactile, carnal inhabitation that's going on, and that we're going to call a method. It's a kind of a method. I want to be very gentle. It's synthetic, it's entangled, it's emergent. And I just want to also clarify the word entangled here does not mean mixed up. So anybody try and throw that out. Entangled means a certain way of connecting, no matter how far apart. You can connect this far apart, this far apart, this far apart. But what Einstein found is that there were connections that were thousands of light years apart and they could still move together. They're entangled. And this was a very complicated conversation, and nobody knew how to talk about it because nothing's faster than the speed of light, but something was faster because these could move together and repeat. So what you see here, I'm going to try and see if I can get this thing away. Is a slide that has the titles here: sleep, lick, leak, deep, points. And I put them in a very certain environment so that you can get a sense of how a title can play with the imaging. We have something here, we have something here, we have something here. We could move these all around, actually. We could have it as lick, sleep, leap, and we could have deep somewhere else. We could have deep in the other room. But it matters that there's some kind of playfulness that's going on. And I don't think I can do what I was planning to do on this one, which was to turn it around so that you could see that I could draw. Yeah, I'm sorry that I can't actually show you how to do this, but normally if I had a different setup, I would turn the slide and then we could draw it. And we could draw it so that it could look like this. It could have this incredible sort of map to it. And that map I like to call snakes and ladders, because in the ancient Indian moment, we had, oh, sorry, I've jumped. Let me just see if I can find it. Yeah, we'll go here. In the ancient Indian move, we have a game called Snakes and Ladders, which I'm sure all of you have heard of before. And this game, you roll the die and you go a couple steps, and then you might slide somewhere else. You might go through the snake, you might go through the moves. And what Maya's work does, and a lot of these works that are very Duchampian, they're very found, you're putting them together, whether it's photogrammetry or something else, it has this slide moment that goes on. You're going along, minding your own business, and suddenly, boom, you're somewhere else. So I was trying to give you a sense of how that works. And if we go back to this, I drew the same kind of move on this board as here. So if we actually just lifted that off, we could say, even though these look sort of alike, they're really not alike, and we could actually connect them. And this connection says that they belong together, they're attracted together. So we have suddenly a moment which is going to be the start of entanglement, where something looks similar, is attracted, it belongs together. So we have what's called a surface. The first takeaway was the encounter itself, where you're actually naming what happens. Here we have a surface that's connected, and this surface creates something odd, something moving. Einstein called it E equals mc squared. It's the very famous, most people have ever seen this equation. If we look at energy equals mass times velocity squared, what we find is not that you look from left to right, but look at the equal sign and connect the two sides, and you'll begin to understand Maya's work. So it's the equation that's critical here. This thing, I've done it in red, I hope you can see that. The E is bound to the mass times velocity squared. That's the whole picture. We could write that circle, we could make that 0 as 2 lines like that. So now we can see the E and the mc squared as one big surface. So it has energy, mass times velocity squared. So we have edges, we have grounds, we have surfaces. we have what Heidegger called, annoyingly, he's involved in this conversation, A equals A, or A is attached to A, or A creates the discourse of A. And so this whole thing creates the moment of encounter, or what becomes a form of witnessing, a form of being in it, or a form of being out of it, somehow connected. I ask you, how do you escape from this A equals A? This is why I have the day job as a philosopher and not as an artist. This is my own drawing, which is obviously not as great as it could be. Anyway, so in fact, what we're talking about are things called pseudomorphic edges, and they can look like, what do you call it, Mobius strips. This one is a Klein bottle. But the point is that it forms these economies, it forms these surfaces, and they have odd circulations. Someone like Leotard called this called it libidinal economy. It's got an aliveness to it. And on the right-hand side of the screen, I hope you can see that there is a thing called Maxwell's cone of time. It looks like an hourglass. The middle is the present. The top is either past or future. It doesn't really matter. The bottom is past or future. It doesn't matter. And between it is elsewhere. And if you collapse that, then you have the present on top, and you have the future and the back together. And this is the kind of work that artists have been playing with at least since the Maxwell's cone of time, the 1800s, late 1800s. So we have a third takeaway, which is that you have these kind of surfaces. So the first surface is that you have a sticky cohesion. These cohesions have a thickness, but they don't really have a thickness. They don't really have, it's like if you broke into your computer screen, you wouldn't find 10,000 songs falling out. You know, you might have 10,000 songs, but it wouldn't fall out. So this sticky cohesion goes out in all directions. It forever expands and it forever contracts, which is a very peculiar thing. We call it augmented reality, and we now are allowed to, we're now able to code this, which I can talk about later, but this is what you see in Maya's work. It's quite profound how it's been caught, or extended reality. So the point is that that A equals A, that takes the whole thing, including the A's, we could call that a zero. We could call that a topological aliveness. For those of you that are computing coders, you know where we're going with this. So you have zero as topological aliveness, and then you can go, oh, sorry, I did bring in some stable diffusion here. We're going to skip this. That's too complicated. So then we have an entity, this topological aliveness. Certain authors are calling it a wake, like Christina Sharp's work. She has the question of the wake, the ship, the hold, the weather. These all form these kind of surfaces. Even if you looked at a weather map, you'd see these kind of mad surfaces. And this is in The Wake on Blackness and Being by Christina Sharp. Or it could be a rubbing. And this rubbing could form a surface. It could form a topological aliveness, a frottage. This is basically the work of Kegoro Machario, and it's all how past and future and present rub up against each other. But the rubbing also creates a mark. So you, on the one hand, you have a zero, and on the other hand, you have a mark. In other words, you have a 0 and a 1, but it's a very different form of the binary, because the 0 now is this thing that can expand in all directions or contract in all directions, and the mark allows for the contraction or the expansion to go in whatever direction. And so we have a very particular artistic move that's being made. It's a poetic move, it's a rhythm, and this is the kind of work that you see here today. So you have zero and segment or mark or slash or whatever you want to call it, and that forms a very weird cohesion, and that we're going to call a form of politics. Sorry, I didn't realize this was me up here. I'm sorry about that. It's a certain kind of storytelling where there's different marks going on, and that is really my presentation. I hope I helped you get a little bit closer to what's going on. Thank you very much. So I thought that your work was fantastic, and I wanted to just ask you a couple of questions. I mean, I really liked this use of milk in particular, and you talk about it in terms of the biopolitics, but also it has a smell. Mm-hmm. And I like the fact that you bring in your work sound, like I was originally going to do this in the other room, but it was too loud. And that's great, you know, because the waterfall and so on, and the smell and the kind of toxicity that you know is going on. I was wondering if you could comment on that a little bit more about how you deal with that kind of decay, and at the same time present a form of care. You know, this is a very, you know, there's a care that's been put together here. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yes, thank you so much for your wonderful comment. I really like the presentation. It's like, I don't know. I think it was I found it very artistic, and it's in a way like it's like I don't know. Um, it wasn't like an introduction, but it was more like a constant questioning, and I think it made my work sound more mysterious, and I really love love that. And yeah, when it comes to yeah, thank you. Yeah, when it comes to the use of milk or this kind of, because I often use like a fluid materials in my work, and it decays and it smells and it welcomes bees, flies, everything that all the museum hates. And I am actually proud, very much proud of it, because I'm one of the theoretical background that I'm drawing on is it's queer ecology, like the one first discussed by, I think it's not first, but one recently discussed by Timothy Morton. And he talks about this sense of abjection, you know, how people talk about environment as something that's outside of human society, but actually when you say a nature, when you say talk about environment, it's actually not about, they're only talking about forest or something that human hasn't yet contained, but actually human being as well. It's actually inside ecology, and we are nothing superior or inferior to any other species. And this entangled connection itself is embedded in the ecology. So I think it's a very political act that people, when they say like we should preserve ecology, like environment or nature, they just, you know, this just object this sense of like how we actually polluted, how we made everything dirty, and we try to exclude this part from this sense of ecology. So yeah, I think what I'm trying to do inside my work is to counter this kind of political objection. I would say I want anything dirty to be included in my work, and I think that's the reality of um yeah, just taking care of anything. It's like there will be a time probably that I have to take care of my mother or grandmother, and that's the intimacy, and that's the, of course it's a lot of work, but that's the essence. I feel like there's a toxicity that's already included in the intimacy, and I think that's the essential part.
Yeah, that's really interesting. So if one has this toxicity that one is dealing with, and you're dealing with it, we're all dealing with it really, but you're dealing with it specifically, you've gone to different sites that are quite, you know, harsh. How do you manage to see that the work is always encouraging? Because there's something about your work that takes people into the, you know, kind of the depths of despair in a certain sense, but at the same time offers a form of either resistance, political resistance, a different way of thinking, a different way of commenting. How do you sort of stay hopeful in a time period that is so harsh?
You mean hopeful about making art, or hopeful about just...
Hopeful about change. I mean, obviously working and making art, but the artwork itself is very politically astute, and it takes very complicated questions and makes it accessible, first of all, to people who may not be aware of it, but second of all, it does it in a way that offers a kind of, not a way out, but a way to think about it so that it might be different. So it's not always, you know, closed down. It's just, you know, an onslaught of horror. And I'm just wondering how you've managed to do that, because, you know, there's wars going on, there's, you know, pollution every 5 minutes, you know, there's just, you know, terrible shifts that are happening right now. And I'm just curious how your artwork enables you, and, you know, it's obviously, you know, your personhood as well, but your artwork is doing something that is quite positive and important. And I just wanted to have you speak about that a bit more.
Right. Actually, I think I don't know. I just, in general, I think as this is my political stance, but I'm against this kind of, because this is, I think this has already been discussed in a writing by Susan Sontag. I think there was one writing called Regarding the Pain of the Others. She talks about all those like documentary footages or like very sensationalized like corpses that was circulating after 9/11. And she talks about the importance of journalism in a sense like, you know, like you can make it more and more sensational. There are tragic photos everywhere and it is accessible anytime if you want to, just by opening an iPhone or anything. But I think this this war of like sensationalize more and more, like going towards more and more sensational, I think it's actually not facing the pain, like the internal pain. And I just cannot agree with it. And I think that is like my fundamentals. Like when I talk about nuclear trauma or environmental trauma, I think I don't think it helps to use sensational footages, and that's also why I do not use like a first-hand material. For example, I'm working with like animal research centers directly as well, so I have the photography itself, but I do not think it is meaningful that I present them as my work, because it's, you know, I think it's accessible to anyone, but the point of my artistic practices lies in how I can translate it in a way that makes something complicated and present it as, you know, like as a complicated model, because the background itself is already very much complicated. I feel like I shouldn't translate that. I just have to digest it and present in my own way, in my own sense of complexity. I feel like. Hope this is an answer.
Yeah, no, it's great. It's great. And then I just wanted to then move into a slightly complex question, or more technically complex. Can you explain to all of us how you're using stable diffusion? I mean, stable diffusion is a weird animal. And for those of you that are not used to it, you know, you take an image and a text, and it has like what we call a U-bend to it, which means that the text goes through a certain thing and then it comes out some other way. And, you know, and the other way, though, is dependent on how much data you have. And of course, one doesn't have infinite data. So at some point, the stable diffusion starts to repeat itself and starts to repeat really some kind of, not always, but often apocalyptic approaches to AI, which is to say that, you know, in Silicon Valley in particular, the approach tends to be very science fiction, very cybernetic of the 1950s and 70s, you know, where the world is being taken over by machines and all the rest of this kind of thing. And so I was curious about your use of stable diffusion. I thought that maybe what you were using downstairs in the photogrammetry thing, and how you were able to get it again to move slightly away from the science fiction, you know, uber, you know, scenario where the machines are taking over the world, into something else, something that also brings in the human or brings in some kind of interspecies aliveness. Can you talk about that at all?
Yeah, certainly. So I also find that like a U-curve and also this, I don't know, the more you feed I don't know, the less the footage uses, it becomes more, I don't know, ugly. And also those like eye-ish symbol that's often seen in a, you know, like a image processing AI that appears, and the maximum I could emit this time, because I have 5,000 photo as a foundation, so I could only try 5,000. But then what I try to do is you know, there are several image processing AI that you can actually directly emit the video. However, I tried that as well, but I didn't, I was not happy with the quality, because there is no, it was something very much the opposite direction of where I wanted to be, because I wanted to present this intimacy, or I wanted people to think that this could be my skin, your skin, or it could be that lake outside of your home or something. But it looked like very monstrous, ugly, abjected. It just led to a completely different outcome. So I started doing up curations. I started writing, because I studied machine engineering, so I write a little bit of Python. I just do a little bit of curation of the calls. At the same time, I picked up like emit them as a photography, and then I also put them into, there's another for software or the platform called p5.js, and I put them together into p5.js. I like, how should you call it, make the narrative by myself, like I'm just like placing them differently, or just changing the orders so that it makes smoother, so that it looks smoother and doesn't causes our, how should you call it, like I don't know, this nausea in a way.
Yeah. Mhm.
Yeah, and that's what I do. So I firstly create a photo, and then make a connection by using p5.js so that it looks like a morphing, like a very gradual morphing, more stable than the one that I created with the video processing AI in the first place. And I think that's the extent I could go as a, it's really difficult to work as an artist with AI, because AI itself they think in completely different way compared to us. And it was a process of respecting the way that they think, but at the same time, trying to having a control back over to my side as well.
Yeah, I mean, that's where I would say that your approach to queering, I mean, rather than, just queer or something like as a gender or as a sexual orientation, but in fact, the method, it does something else. And I thought that's what you were doing, so that makes sense to me. What I, to bring everybody else in on it, is that normally in coding environment, in AI coding environments, how it works is that a code goes out and tries to get rid of what they call noise and find the target, whatever that is. So that's a curated moment. So you find the target and you bring it back, and by targeting it, cuts, and it basically follows a Cartesian, or let's say Dewey Decimal system of library ordering. So it's following an old system of how one orders in a library with subjects and categories, and you get smaller and smaller and smaller, and then you have your thing. But in the querying side of it, what happens is the signal is emphasized rather than the noise, and the signal becomes the noise, as it were. So you're trying to bring back openness, so you're trying to bring back what's called undecidability, so the system doesn't close down and get tighter and tighter. And what's great about that is that it is the basis of how most artists work, because if you knew in advance what your piece would look like, it would be terrible. So you're sort of figuring, oh, we'll try this, we'll try that, and then you play around with it. But of course, you wouldn't want this if you were having open heart surgery. You'd really want them to find the thing and deal with it, and not deal with all the noise and have poetry reading, while you're on the table in open heart. So in a certain sense, both systems, as it were, are important. And what is interesting about your work is that you're able to so skillfully show how, not show, but the work itself expresses this kind of open signaling. And I find I wanted to throw that out because I think that addresses one of your worries about witnessing, and the witnessing, how does one witness, like when you're looking at Jean Genet and, and the comments about, well, looking at the hand and not seeing anything, or not seeing it in all of its detail, or not seeing whatever. How does one actually see something? How does it actually operate? Or in these days with the deep fakes, you're seeing something that looks real. How do you know it's real or not? And the things that are not deep fakes, the things that are actually real, one misses it. So how did you, I mean, obviously it's trial and error, but how do you, on the whole, think that you're able to witness in a way that's not just glossing over something or creating a false witnessing, false bearance?
That's a really interesting question. Actually, that reminded me of the discussion by Susan Shipley, like about the material witness, because she also, in that book, she talks about how any kind of evidence, like either material or immaterial, it has a limitation. Like there is a, there is a limits of things that they can present as a witness, like as witnessing. Also, the limits of things that you can keep the traces of. And I don't know, like I just feel like it's like a Mobius-like concept, like
Yeah.
I'm trying to see more and trying to witness more, but still it never reaches to a point that I'm getting to know. fully about it. And I think that's the reason that I'm still in academia. I don't know. I think if it's for money, I would have chosen some different ways, but just I'm a fan of this like precarious state where I feel like I've known something, and then the next moment I feel like haven't seen anything yet.
So thank you very, very much, Maya and Johnny, for tonight's talk. Very intriguing, very interesting.